I was finishing up my workday when I received a message from Malik, a guy who I had met on Tinder. His texts were engaging and thoughtful, with a great sense of humour. When he suggested that we meet at a vintage arcade for our first date, I was excited. It seemed like a fun and relaxed setting. The arcade was buzzing with the sounds of old-school games and flashing lights. I spotted Malik right away. He was standing by the entrance, looking just like his photos. He greeted me with a friendly hug, which felt a bit longer than usual, but not alarming. We started playing games and chatting, and I was having a good time. As the evening progressed, I began to feel uncomfortable. Malik's touches became more frequent. His hand would linger on my back, and he stood too close. I tried to brush it off, thinking that he might just be overly enthusiastic. But his behaviour soon crossed a line. While we were playing air hockey, he touched my waist and leaned in much closer than necessary. I began to feel uneasy. Malik's face was now too close to mine, and I noticed he seemed to be inhaling deeply, as if he was getting too close on purpose. I tried to step away, but he followed, placing his hand on my lower back. "Malik, can we have a bit more space?" I asked, trying to stay calm. His smile faltered. "Why? I'm just enjoying our time," he said, though his voice lacked its earlier warmth. I moved to another game, hoping the change would help, but his behaviour only became more invasive. When I laughed at a joke, he leaned in and took an unusually long sniff near my neck. I was taken aback. "Malik, what are you doing?" I asked, stepping away. His demeanour changed abruptly. His face hardened, and his tone became sharp. "What's your issue? We're just having fun. Why are you acting so weird about it?" he asked, gripping my arm. "I think I need to go," I said, trying to pull away. Malik's expression grew angry. "So you're just gonna leave now, after all this?" he said, his voice rising. I managed to free myself and walked quickly towards the exit, my heart racing. I glanced back to see him standing there, looking frustrated and confused. I didn't stop till I was safely in my car, locking the doors and driving away. That night, I deleted Malik's contact information. Based on our conversations prior to meeting up, I could have never seen it going this way. But I suppose there are plenty of fish in the sea. I matched with Tom on Bumble a few weeks ago. His profile was charming, intelligent, adventurous, and with a smile that suggested he genuinely enjoyed life. We hit it off instantly over messages, and after a week of messaging, we decided to meet at a local bar. The bar was a cozy spot with dim lighting and a relaxed vibe. Tom was waiting at a table when I arrived, and he greeted me with a warm hug and a friendly smile. The evening started off well. We talked and laughed over drinks, and Tom seemed to be exactly as he appeared online. But as the night wore on, I noticed something unsettling. Tom kept ordering more drinks for me, insisting that I tried this or that cocktail. At first, I thought he was just being considerate, but as the drinks piled up, I began to feel increasingly off balance. I was a lightweight when it came to alcohol, and by the time I was on my third drink, my vision was starting to blur. Tom's behaviour became more peculiar. He kept encouraging me to drink more, even suggesting shots of something strong. I hesitated, but his persistent cheerfulness and insistence made me acquiesce. "Just one more, it'll be fun," he said with a grin that now seemed a little too wide. By the time I finished the shots, I was feeling quite drunk, my inhibitions melting away. Tom's attempts to make me drink more were starting to raise red flags. My mind was clouded, and I struggled to keep my thoughts coherent. It was then that I noticed something strange. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw another man, a tall guy with a grim expression, sitting at the bar, occasionally glancing over at us. Tom was now pressing me to go with him to the bar's back room for a quieter spot to talk. My sense of unease grew, but I was too intoxicated to protest effectively. As we stood up, Tom's hand felt surprisingly firm around my arm, guiding me towards the back. The tall man at the bar followed us at a distance. Once we reached the back room, which was dimly lit and empty, Tom's demeanor changed. He closed the door behind us, locking it. "I think you've had enough," he said, his voice taking on a more sinister tone. "Let's just relax here for a bit." I was beginning to feel panicked. The room seemed to close in around me, and the effects of the alcohol made me dizzy. Suddenly, I heard a muffled conversation outside the door, and then a voice I didn't recognize. "Is everything set?" the tall man asked Tom. My heart raced.
What's going on?
I slurred, trying to make sense of the situation. Tom's expression was cold now, and he moved towards me with a menacing look. Before I could react, the tall man burst into the room, and I realized they were in this together. Tom grabbed my arm, and the tall man approached with a sinister grin. Panic surged through me, and I started screaming like a banshee. Just then, the door was kicked open with a loud bang. An undercover cop, who had been watching from the bar after growing suspicious of Tom's behavior, stormed in.
"Police! Stop right there!"
he shouted. Tom and the tall man froze, and the cops swiftly subdued them, pulling out handcuffs and restraining them. The bar's patrons had been alerted, and within minutes, more officers arrived. I was taken outside and given medical attention, while Tom and his accomplice were arrested. The whole experience left me shaken, but the undercover cop's timely intervention saved me from a much worse fate. That night, I deleted my Bumble account and vowed to be more cautious in the future. I was on holiday in Dublin, soaking up the sights and pints like any self-respecting bloke from England. The city was alive with its usual blend of lively pubs and historic charm, and I was determined to make the most of it. Eager to meet some locals and spice up my trip, I jumped on Hinge. That's where I matched with Erin. Her profile stood out. She had this infectious laugh and smile that practically leapt off the screen. We swapped messages about everything from our favourite pints to the quirkiest local spots, and our conversation quickly turned flirtatious. Erin was exactly the kind of woman that I had hoped to meet. She had that irresistible mix of charm and confidence, and the idea of spending an evening with her was even more enticing than any pub crawl. After a few days of back and forth banter, she suggested we meet at her place. Her flat was a bit off the beaten path, but I was up for it. She mentioned it would be a casual night with a few friends. I imagined the evening would be filled with laughs, good drinks, and hopefully, some sparks flying. The night of the meetup, I was buzzing with excitement. I had dressed smartly, hoping to impress, and followed the directions to her place. The route took me through increasingly deserted streets, and the quietness of the area set me on edge. I tried to shake off the feeling as I approached her flat, envisioning a warm welcome and a night to remember. When I knocked on Erin's door, I was greeted by two blokes who looked like they'd stepped straight out of a dodgy crime drama. One of them was a bulky guy with a scowl that would make anyone flinch, while the other one had a shifty, almost predatory look in his eyes. The contrast between them and Erin's bubbly personality was jarring. My initial excitement started to wane, but I brushed it off, trying to stay optimistic. "Hello, I'm here for Erin," I said with a forced smile, my heart still racing with anticipation. Without a word, the bigger bloke shoved me into the hallway. The sudden violence took me completely by surprise. I staggered, trying to regain my balance, but before I could react, he kicked me hard in the shins, sending a shockwave of pain up my leg. The other guy, meanwhile, was already diving into my pockets. I could barely breathe, the pain and confusion overwhelming me. My wallet, phone, and watch were quickly taken, and I struggled to fend them off, but they were relentless. As the bigger guy grabbed my arm and pulled me towards the back of the flat, I felt my adrenaline begin to pump. The dim light from a single bulb made the situation feel even more claustrophobic. The room seemed to close in, and my mind raced with desperate thoughts.
What's happening?
I gasped, trying to get some answers as I was shoved roughly. Suddenly, the bigger guy punched me in the stomach, making me double over in pain. I felt like I was losing control over everything. I tried to fight back, but the blows kept coming. I managed to wriggle free from the grasp and bolted out of the flat, my pulse pounding in my ears. I stumbled down the darkened street, the fear and adrenaline making each step feeling heavier. My escape made it feel like everything was happening in slow motion, each second stretching into eternity as I scrambled for safety. I ducked into a nearby phone box, my heart pounding as I dialed 999. My hands were trembling as I tried to explain the situation to the operator. The urgency in my voice betrayed the panic I was feeling.
Help! I've been robbed. They've taken everything.
I managed to say, my voice cracking. As I waited, the shadows around me seemed to deepen, and every sound made me jump. The quietness of the street only heightened my sense of vulnerability. After what felt like an age, the flashing lights of police cars appeared, cutting through the darkness. Relief washed over me, even though I still felt tense and exposed. The officers quickly assessed the situation and headed towards Aaron's flat. I stayed in the phone box, watching anxiously as they went in. My nerves were frayed, and every minute felt like an eternity. Finally, the police returned, their expressions serious.
The place is empty,
one of them said.
It looks like they've cleared out.
I was both relieved and disheartened. The robbers had vanished, leaving no trace of their presence. The officers took down my details and gave me advice on how to stay safe in the future. They assured me they would keep an eye on the area and follow up on any leads. I walked back to my accommodation, each step heavy with the weight of the night's events. The excitement I had felt earlier had turned into a grim reminder of the dangers of meeting strangers in unfamiliar places. I deleted Aaron's profile from Hinge and vowed to be more cautious in the future. It was a harsh lesson learned. The allure of a promising date can quickly turn into a nightmare. It was a late Friday evening when I found myself scrolling through dating profiles on OkCupid. After hours of swiping left on countless profiles, I stumbled upon Derek. He was drop-dead gorgeous. Tall, fit, with a chiseled jawline and a smile that seemed to light up his face. His photos were flawless, stylish clothes, fancy parties, exotic vacations. He looked like someone straight out of a magazine. Desperate for a change of luck, I swiped right. To my surprise, Derek swiped right back. Our conversation started off great. It was charming, witty, and the connection felt real. We decided to meet up the following weekend at a trendy cafe downtown. On the day of the date, I was a bundle of nerves and excitement. I arrived early, nervously checking my phone every few minutes for any updates from Derek. So when a man walked into the cafe, I did a double take. He was nothing like the Derek in his photos. This man was significantly heavier, dressed in worn-out clothes and had a face marked by deep scars. He didn't even remotely resemble the Derek I had been chatting with. He came over and introduced himself, and I could barely mask my shock and disappointment. I hoped this was some kind of cruel prank or horrible mistake. I forced myself to sit through the date, trying to be polite, while my mind raced with questions. The conversation was strained, and every second felt like an eternity. As soon as I could, I made an excuse about having a sudden emergency and stood up to leave. But as I tried to walk past him, his demeanor changed drastically. He stood up and blocked my way, his face twisted with anger.
"What's wrong?"
he shouted, his voice echoing through the cafe.
"You're just going to leave me like this?"
I felt a wave of panic. I tried to push past him, but he grabbed my arm with a grip that was surprisingly strong.
"You think you're too good for me now?"
he yelled, his voice breaking with desperation. The cafe fell silent as people stared, their eyes flicking between us. I felt a hot rush of embarrassment and fear. Several patrons stepped in, trying to defuse the situation, and someone called the police. Derek's rage only intensified as he screamed after me, his pleas growing more frantic. By the time the authorities arrived, Derek was being escorted out of the cafe, his shouts fading as he was taken away. I was left shaken and humiliated, surrounded by sympathetic staff and concerned patrons. The experience left me uneasy and wary of meeting people online. I never swiped right again without thoroughly vetting someone. That night, I learnt the hard way that not everyone is who they seem, and sometimes the consequences of deception can be terrifyingly real. I met Laura on Plenty of Fish, and we clicked almost instantly. Her profile was full of bright, engaging photos, and our conversations flowed naturally. When we decided on an ice skating date, she mentioned that it was a place that she used to visit with her ex. She seemed a bit apprehensive, but I reassured her that it would be a fun, relaxing way to spend time together and hopefully ease her nerves. Arriving at the rink, I spotted Laura immediately. She was already lacing up her skates, her face lighting up when she saw me. We hit the ice with a mix of excitement and nervous energy. We skated around, enjoying each other's company, and I couldn't help but notice how Laura's initial apprehension seemed to melt away with each lap. But then, I noticed a man lingering near the rink's entrance. He was scruffy looking, his clothes rumpled as if he had just rolled out of bed. He kept glancing at us, his eyes fixed on Laura. A knot tightened in my stomach as he drew closer. Laura's smile faltered as she recognized him. Her eyes widened and she stiffened. "That's Mark," she said quietly, her voice tinged with unease. Mark's presence was like a sudden chill in the air. He marched over, his face a storm of frustration and anger.
"Laura!"
he demanded, his voice carrying over the rink's ambient noise. Laura's initial attempt at calm was met with Mark's growing hostility. I could see Laura's anxiety rising as Mark's gaze shifted to me, his expression darkening.
"So this is who you've moved on with?"
he spat, his tone harsh and accusatory. Laura tried to explain that it was just a casual date, but Mark wasn't interested in explanations. His anger seemed to grow with each word, and the tension between us escalated quickly. Mark's aggression was unsettling, making me feel increasingly uncomfortable. I could see Laura trying to manage the situation, her attempts to calm Mark only making his anger more volatile. The other skaters and rink staff began to take notice, their concerned whispers and glances adding to the mounting pressure. Suddenly, Mark shoved me roughly, causing me to lose my balance and fall against the rink's barrier. Laura rushed to help me up, but Mark's anger showed no sign of abating. The rink staff quickly intervened, asking Mark to leave and escorting him out. Mark's angry shouts continued as he was led away, and I could see Laura's distress. Laura and I decided to cut the date short. We left the rink, both shaken and uneasy about what had just happened. Although Mark's threats were loud and disturbing, the immediate danger had passed. We reported the incident to the police, who assured us they would look into it, but no further action was taken. In the following days, Laura and I occasionally received unsettling messages from Mark, but he never appeared again. Despite the ordeal, Laura and I tried to move on, but the memory of that night lingered, a reminder of how quickly a seemingly innocent date can take a turn for the worst.